Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Up Show, the best Gamecocks podcast on the internet. Today is Thursday, September the 10th, 2020. On today's show, we conclude the TSUS Season Preview Series. Today, I'm giving the specialists some love. We're talking Gamecocks special teams heading into 2020 football season. I'll break down looking back at 2019, the key departures, key returners, top storylines, why they'll be better, why they'll be worse. Season will be successful if. I'll give my prediction for the 2020 unit and much, much more there. Also, news and notes, your listener questions, and we have a fantastic conversation. A guy that I feel blessed to call a friend of mine, Mike Gillespie of ABC Columbia. He's the sports director at ABC Columbia, does a fantastic job in the local Columbia, South Carolina market. I'll talk to him about everything from his career in media, being a UF alum, Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, Urban Meyer, the Gamecocks 2020 football season, the whole COVID-19 pandemic, much, much more as we dive into everything here on a Thursday afternoon. Sit back, relax, enjoy, folks. It is all brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Guys, it's summertime. Summer is winding down. We're getting into fall. At MyBookie, that can only mean one thing. It is winning season. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means free bets, super contests, Survivor, and more at MyBookie. Winning season is all about your chance to win big. Guys, you can bet everything at MyBookie. NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball, UFC, college football, NFL. College football really getting going this weekend. You want to get some bets in, go ahead and do it. The craziest sports time of your life is here, guys. It's really simple. Just make your picks, win big, and collect your cash. The TSUS listeners, you guys are the smartest fans in the world. We all know that. Invest in that intuition, guys. You're all really smart. Use that big brain. Invest in your intuition. Select from hundreds of future bets, or you can bet games in real time with MyBookie's live betting. Put that big brain of yours to good use. Go to mybookie.ag. That's mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Gamecocks. So it's really simple. Mybookie.ag. Promo code Gamecocks and double your first deposit. Guys, new players get up to $1,000 in free play. So, guys, if you go to mybookie.ag, use promo code Gamecocks. You put in $1,000, they're going to give you $1,000. They're going to match it, give you $1,000 in free play. It's a win-win. You put in $500, they'll give you $500. You put in $250, they'll give you $250. It is a win-win, guys. You cannot lose in this scenario. It's designed to add excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. Thousands of cross-sport wagers, props, and parlays await. Sign up now to bet with the best and celebrate your victory. Again, guys, mybookie.ag, promo code Gamecocks. That's mybookie.ag, promo code Gamecocks. Your winning season begins today only at MyBookie. Let's get it. Welcome in. Happy Thursday. I'm Chris Phillips, host of the Spurs Up Show. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in. Got a packed show. We're wrapping up the TSUS Season Preview Series, as I mentioned in the beginning, talking the Gamecocks special teams again. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. I know I am. Very excited. Guys, guess what? Football is on TV tonight once again. You know, it's funny. I heard the guys over at Saturday Down South say this because, listen, I've been talking with them. Obviously, we had Connor O'Gara. We had Chris Marlowe on the show. They made a great point, and I agree, guys, and I want to share it with you. It's so funny. And I feel like we kind of deserve this. It feels like we're getting like multiple starts to football season, if you will. You know what I mean? Like we had the first weekend of the first game, which was an FCS game. Then we had our first FBS games last week. And now we have our first Power 5 games this weekend with the ACC. Tonight, we have our first NFL game. This is the first NFL weekend. Then we're going to have our first SEC weekend. It's like football is like starting multiple weekends. You know what I mean? It's like happening multiple times, and I love it. I love it. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Again, Chiefs-Texans tonight. You got Miami UAB. We've got football all weekend. And we are just 16 days away from a Gamecocks kickoff at Williams-Brice Stadium. I'm very, very excited. Appreciate you guys tuning in again. We got a lot to get to as we wrap up the TSUS Season Preview Series. And I'm just in a fantastic mood. I'm in a fantastic mood. I'm elated to be talking to you guys. I'm elated that football is back. I'm just happy. I'm just happy. Just spread some joy today, right? It's a Thursday. It's almost Friday. For some of you, it might be Friday. This was a short week anyways. Spread some joy. Spread some cheer. Smile at somebody. Say whatever. Say, hey, just be happy today. Why not, right? Inject some positivity. Before we get into everything, a couple of housekeeping items as always. For those that have done so, thank you so much. But if you have not done so, be sure to rate and subscribe. Go leave 5 stars, leave your thoughts, your feedback, whether you're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever it may be. We hit 300 reviews last week, obviously, which fantastic. Very nice job, guys. Let's get to 400. Just take 5 seconds out of your day. If you haven't done so, take 5 seconds. It helps me out tremendously. It helps boost up the podcast. Maybe those that have not heard of it, take 5 seconds, leave 5 stars. Even if there's things you like, things you don't like, whatever you want to see more of, less of, go ahead and leave it there. Also, if you're not subscribed, guys, next week is the last week of only Monday, Thursday shows. We'll have normal Monday, Thursday next week, and then the following week, it will be game week, and we will be going every single day, Monday through Friday on the podcast, just like I did last season. Extremely excited for that because I love getting in that routine. I love just talking football. I love making content, obviously, as you guys know. But I'm very excited. You want to be sure you are subscribed at that point because you want to get those daily notifications. You want to get those notifications when the show drops. So make sure, guys, make sure you rate the show and make sure you're subscribed as well, because if you're listening and you're not subscribed, I genuinely don't know what you're doing at this point. Also, one other tidbit. I talked about this a little bit on Monday's show, but I think the Daily Crow is back. It's kind of semi-back right now. You guys may have seen I ran a test stream on Tuesday. Ran another one last night as well. I like the platform a lot. I think it's really useful. It's cool to be able to stream across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube all at once. It's really, really dope. You're able to put over – the platform is awesome. And I don't know what the future of Rowdy Rooster Radio is if I'll bring it back. But the whole point is, like I told you guys, we're experimenting with content. I will let you guys know, obviously, but I can guarantee you there's going to be some daily piece of content, whether it is the Daily Crow or whether it is Rowdy Rooster Radio, that's going to happen as we get to game week. So just to let you guys know, if you've seen that, the Daily Crow is semi-back, might be fully back next week. We will see. But, just want to keep you guys know kind of where my head's at, what's going on right now. So, all right, let's dive into the meat of things. The TSUS Season Preview Series concludes. And, hey, you might say we saved the best for last. We're talking Gamecock special teams. Look, you got to show the specialists some love, okay? Punters and kickers are people too. You got to show the specialists some love. I'm really, really excited. Listen, I think as Gamecock fans, none of us should take for granted how important special teams is, because when Deebo Samuel was at Carolina, South Carolina won some games because of special teams. So I'm excited to talk about it. There's a lot here. Let's first look back at 2019. 2019, I would say a pretty successful year for South Carolina specialists, and with the offense being as bad as it was, you had to use their specialists quite a bit, unfortunately. Parker White, by far his best year as a Gamecock, 18 for 22 on field goals. I thought a guy, when I talked about and broke down the kickers, and I broke down the specialists in my position unit previews, I thought the biggest thing with Parker White was he was put in really, really good positions to succeed. That was the biggest thing with Parker White. I think the coaching staff did a really good job of managing him, not asking him to do too much. They let him get off to a good start last year, build some confidence, and I really thought you saw that last season as a whole. Again, 18 for 22, very, very solid. He's a guy that has basically turned into an automatic thing inside of 50 yards. I think he's a guy that does have the leg to hit some over 50, but he's basically automatic under 50 yards again. I thought you saw the coaching staff do a really, really good job of managing him, not asking too much, letting him build some confidence, get in a groove, and I think it definitely paid off. The guy you have to mention when you're talking specialists and special teams in 2019, Joseph Charlton. I mean, I know it's not sexy necessarily to talk about a punter, but school record for punting average at 45.5 yards per punt. He was second team All-SEC last year. Last year, guys, he averaged 47.7 yards per punt. Absolutely insane. When you think about that, he had a long of 66, 27 punts over 50 yards, 28 punts inside the 20. This dude was an absolute machine for the Gamecocks. I know, by the way, he had like a Heisman moment when he juked out the dude at Texas A&M and ran for a first down. But no, seriously, Joseph Charlton was so valuable for a Gamecocks football team that struggled so mightily offensively, and you think for your defense to help them out. When you can flip the field, it is a very, very, very big deal for your team. It's a big deal. Special teams is a big part of the game, and Joseph Charlton was a weapon. Joseph Charlton was a weapon for the Gamecocks. So South Carolina going to miss him dearly as well. You take a look at the other special team stats in regards to punt returns, kick returns. You do lose Brian Edwards, obviously, and we'll talk about him in just a second, but you lose Brian Edwards. He only had 7 returns last year, which is kind of crazy, but 7 returns, 125 yards, 0 touchdowns, had a 17.9-yard average, which not bad. It's okay. Other guys that returned, Josh Vann, Darius Rush, Xavier Legette, those guys factored in, but Brian Edwards was your main punt returner. And then kickoff returns, Shi Smith, 12 returns for 263 yards, 21.9 yards per return. Xavier Legette had 4 for 113 for 28.2. And then you had other guys like Jamie Robinson really got in there, but it was mainly Shi Smith that was doing the returning. So when you take a look at that, I mean, again, a solid year for the Gamecocks on special teams. You didn't have any special teams touchdowns, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in just a second. But you didn't have any special teams touchdowns. But I thought overall, especially when you look at what Parker White and Joseph Charlton did, you were very solid in that regard. Now, you talk about key departures, and I just mentioned them. Joseph Charlton and Brian Edwards. Those are 2 big losses that you're going to have to replace. But you look at the key returners, you've got Parker White, Shi Smith, Xavier Legette, who I think could factor in at the punt returner position, and then Jamie Robinson, who I also think could factor in at the punt return position and the kickoff return position. So you still do have a pretty solid nucleus, a good core coming back, but you got to replace some big pieces as well. What did I just say? Big key pieces as well. And that's where I want to start. That's where I want to start as we dive into the top storylines for 2020. I want to start – the top storyline has to be Joseph Charlton and his departure. And you look right now what Joseph Charlton's doing in the NFL. Why he wasn't drafted, I guess it's because he's a punter, but this dude was so slept on going through the NFL draft and just professional prospects. He just won the starting punting job with the Panthers. In case you're wondering if this dude is legit, he's legit. So how does South Carolina replace Joseph Charlton? Because, again, I know it's – some people might be tuning in this show like, oh, my God, we're talking special teams. Is it really worth it? It's not necessarily sexy to talk special teams. It's not sexy to talk punters especially. But for a team like South Carolina, especially in 2020, where there are so many questions offensively, and you feel like you have a really strong defense, and I talked about one of the big keys to the defense is putting them in positions to be successful. You know, Lou Holtz used to say it. You want to end every possession with a kick. Every single one, whether you're kicking an extra point, whether you're punting, whatever it may be, you want to end it in a kick, right? That's kind of the school of thinking when it comes to the game of football. I'm not telling you guys any breaking news there. But on a team like this where you have questions on offense and a strong defense, having a punter like Joseph Charlton, you can't undervalue how big of a deal that is. Having a weapon like that can flip the field for you. You know, it's only going to help out your football team. It's going to help out your offense. It's going to help out your defense. And it makes a big deal. Obviously, you have Kai Kroger coming in. You have Mitch Jeter. You have guys that are going to compete for that starting job. I think asking the next guy to be like Joseph Charlton, again, the guy has the record for career punting average. He has the record for punting average at 45.5 yards per punt. Asking the next guy to be as good as him might be a little bit much. But South Carolina so desperately, again, a team that is dealing with what it's dealing with, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You need to find a guy that's going to replace Joseph Charlton and be that weapon for you and be able to flip the field for this Gamecocks football team and put that defense in position to be successful and make big plays for you. Another top storyline. Talk about Parker White, obviously. You got to mention Parker White. He's been great for the Gamecocks. And his story is awesome. You know, when I broke down kickers, I talked about it a little bit. His story is awesome, though. Former walk-on, a guy that, you know, struggled mightily in his first year. You know, he's a guy I picked him to not even be the starter his second season on campus. I thought he would get beat out. I thought, you know what, this guy's just not very good. Since then, Parker White has become very, very solid for South Carolina. Again, 18 for 22 last year. He returns for his senior year. And again, we're talking special teams here. For a South Carolina team that offensively, tons of questions, you might be relying on the leg of Parker White a lot this season. I mean, heck, he kicked 22 last year, so he basically averaged 2 per game. You might be relying on the leg of Parker White a lot last year. You might be relying on the leg of Parker White to win you some football games. You think about, I talked about, you know, before, the swing games are so important in this 2020 season. The swing games are so important. So it might come down to a field goal or two. It might come down to a game-winning field goal. We saw Parker White last year in Athens. I mean, it might come down to a kick to win it. So having a guy like Parker White, who is a senior, who's been in those battles, he's kicked some game winners. Having a guy like that, you can't speak enough on how valuable of a piece that is for this Gamecocks football team. Another big storyline, obviously you lose Brian Edwards, which is a huge loss on the offensive side, but also the punt returner. Who replaces Brian Edwards as the lead punt returner? And listen, that's another big key position. I mean, Brian Edwards was back there. Was he the flashiest option? Absolutely not. Was he the biggest, the most explosive option? Absolutely not. But I think what you saw in Brian Edwards, he was a sure-handed guy. He was going to avoid the mistake. He was going to avoid the disaster, if you will. So who's going to be that next guy? They talked about Shi Smith. They talked about Xavier Legette. They talked about Jamie Robinson. I think the upside is there as far as you're going to have a more explosive player returning punts in 2020, but are you going to have that sure-handed guy? Are you going to have that guy? You need to make sure you've got a sure-handed option back there, whoever it may be, whoever's going to replace Brian Edwards. Because the worst thing that can happen to a team, any team, not just South Carolina, but the worst thing that can happen, you muff a punt, you fumble, you turn the football over. And again, this is a South Carolina team that I really just truly believe South Carolina is going to have to win the turnover margin to get wins. I don't think you're going to see South Carolina win a game in which it loses the turnover margin. I don't think you're going to see that. So very, very key position, a key piece the Gamecocks have to replace in 2020. Another top storyline for me, and it kind of feeds into what I was just talking about with Brian Edwards, but is this the year that we see the return of explosive special teams play? Is this the year? Is 2020 the year that we see the return of these special teams being explosive and being a really big factor in the game? Because we all knew there was going to be a drop-off last year. I mean, you lose Deebo Samuel. I mean, it's hard. I mean, Deebo Samuel is who he is for a reason. It's not easy to replace a guy like that, for sure. But I'm just very curious. Again, I think you're going to get more – I hate to say athleticism, but more of that big play threat from the punt returner, no matter who it is. And then you do have Shi Smith returning kicks, but I think you have some other good options as well. Do we finally see Gamecock special teams sort of get off the schneid, if you will, since the departure of Deebo Samuel? Because, before Deebo Samuel, the Gamecocks had done nothing on special teams for like 10 years, 10, 15 years. Actually, I think it was Rashad Fenton that had the kickoff return 2015 against LSU. Before that, it was like 2002 was the last one. So lately, South Carolina has certainly been better on special teams, but I don't know about you guys. I don't want to wait another 13 years before we see another special teams touchdown or kickoff return or whatever. So I just wonder because, again, all of us fans, we all saw how big of a piece of the game it can be when you have a guy back there like a Deebo Samuel that could just change the entire momentum of the game. Could change the entire momentum of the game when he touches the football on special teams. So I just wonder, is this going to be the year that we see the return of those big-time, explosive, game-changing, momentum-changing type of plays return for South Carolina? My last top storyline, and something that I think really does get slept on, and I hope if you're someone that is – God forbid any of the specialists on South Carolina's teams are listening, but maybe you're someone you're familiar with special teams or whatever it may be. I hope this brings a smile to your face that I'm even going to mention this because I don't think most people would. But one of the top storylines, like I mentioned, you return Parker White, but you realize he is the only holdover among snapper, holder, and returner. So you've got to replace your snapper and you've got to replace your holder. And if you don't think that's a big deal, you know nothing about special teams. That is a very big deal. That's a very big deal because a lot of times, listen, a kicker might miss a kick and it's not even his fault. It's a bad snap. It's a bad hold. The timing's not right. And I think we saw that a little bit. I think it was 2017, right? I think we saw that a little bit. I think that's one of the reasons Parker White struggled a few years ago. It was a brand new group of guys because this was after Elliott Fry left. So I think you saw that a little bit. So I just wonder how that dynamic's going to work. And I think it should work out fine. South Carolina's got plenty of capable guys. I mean, you take a look down the list. Matthew Bailey, Max Derschlag, As far as these are your holders, long snappers, Luke Lynn. So those guys, I think they've got some solid options there. But I'll just be very interested. You cannot underestimate the chemistry of that group. That's very important. It's extremely important. So, if you see Parker White struggling early this year, it may not totally be on him. There might be some chemistry issues. I don't think there will be, but that's just something that's got to be a top storyline going in the year. That's something you got to get figured out. And I'm sure they're doing that right now in fall camp, obviously, whatever, what have you. But kicking is just going to be so important for this team. It's going to be so important. South Carolina's not going to be a team that doesn't use its field goal kicker. South Carolina's not going to be a team that doesn't use its punter. You need both of them to be really, really well. You need both of them to be pluses for you. So that snap and that hold, I know it sounds silly, but that snap and that hold are way more important than you think, for sure. All right, let's dive into why they'll be better, why they'll be worse. Let's start with why they will be better. Why the Gamecock special teams, if they're better, why they'll be better in 2020. And I think it's really simple, and I already mentioned it. Having a veteran field goal kicker, I expect Parker White to only get better. I think he'll have his best year at South Carolina. I think he could be an all-SEC type of kicker. So having him and having that veteran kicker in those big-time clutch situations, that is key for South Carolina this year. And then I mentioned earlier, I think another reason why they could be better, like I said, Brian Edwards, fantastic job returning punts. But like I said, he wasn't the most explosive option in the world, okay? He wasn't the most explosive option. I think having the opportunity to put a guy back there who maybe there's a little bit more risk, maybe he's not quite as sure-handed, maybe he's a little bit of a wild card, but having the chance for explosiveness at the punt returner position, I think could help this team tremendously, and you could see – maybe you see a punt return for a touchdown. Maybe we see that again this year. So I think that's the biggest reasons why this group could be better is just your veteran presence in Parker White and the chance, the opportunity for there to be an explosive, a truly explosive playmaker returning punts this year. Why they'll be worse, why the Gamecock special teams could be worse and will be worse if they are in 2020, and this one's really simple. You're just not able to replace Joseph Charlton. You're not able to flip the field the way you thought. I think they will, but, this is just for the hypotheticals, just for the fun of the conversation. The void of Joseph Charlton. If you're not able to find that guy who can flip the field for you, and again, people take it for granted, but it helps the defense so much. It helps the defense so much playing the field position game. You know what I mean? Like I said, with Mike Bobo's offense and a strong defense, I mean, this is a vintage style of football team, it feels like. They're going to play a field position type of game this year. So having that guy is pivotal. If they're not able to replace what Joseph Charlton gave them last year, it could trickle down and affect this team in a negative way for sure. All right, season will be successful if, and it goes back to what I was just talking about in the punting game. Pretty simple because I expect Parker White to do well. I expect the return game to hold its own. Will they get a touchdown? I'd like to say they will. We'll see. But the season will be successful if Kai Kroger fills in the void left in the punting game. This guy was ranked the number one punter in the country. Fantastic player from everything I'm hearing. He looks great in fall camp. The kid has a boot. As long as Kai Kroger really just plays up to his potential and everything we're hearing, like I said, I think the season will be successful for the specialist. Of all the position units and all the position groups, and we talk offense, we talk defense, we talk special teams, I think the special teams will hold their end of the bargain this year. And that gets me into my prediction for the 2020 unit. I do think the specialists are going to hold their end of the bargain this year. I think Parker White will have his best year as a Gamecock. I think he's an all-SEC caliber kicker. I do think Kai Kroger, because listen, they're going to use him a lot. They're going to use Kai Kroger a lot. I think Kai Kroger will fill in nicely. Again, you're the number one punter in the country for a reason. I think this dude should have a solid year. And I will go out on a limb and say I do think the Gamecocks this year, they do get off the schneid and they do get a touchdown in special teams. Whether that's a kickoff return, whether that's a punt return, maybe that's a blocked punt. Who knows? But I do think that South Carolina gets a touchdown in special teams. And like I said, I more than expect the special teams unit to hold up their end of the bargain when it comes to the different position units. I think they're going to have a good year. So that is going to do it for the TSUS Season Preview Series. Again, running through the specialists. You got to love talking about specialists, man. I love it. The special teams guys, they don't get the love they deserve. And if any of you are tuned in, and I know that you're not, but if you are, I appreciate everything you do. Gamecock Nation appreciates what you do. You got to show the specialists some love. So appreciate it. That's awesome. All right. let's get news and notes. We got a ton of listener questions as well, and then we'll jump in this interview. Really only one quick thing as far as news and notes are concerned. In case you guys missed it, Brian Edwards named a starter for the Raiders, which is awesome. Just awesome stuff. It's really cool to see Brian Edwards, how his career has evolved, a guy that definitely battled some adversity, and to see him as a starter for the Raiders, it certainly speaks volumes to the type of player he is. I mean, I think we all knew he was a good player, but it speaks volumes to just how good of a player he is. And that Raiders offense, I think Brian Edwards is going to have a big year. I think he's going to have a big, big, big rookie year. So awesome stuff for Brian Edwards. Some other camp tidbits as well. Nothing really crazy happening this week. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more that comes out this weekend when the Gamecocks scrimmage at Williams-Brice Stadium Saturday. But nothing really major to dive into, I would say. So we'll go ahead and get in these listener questions because there are some really, really good ones, and I want to dive into these. Let's first start. Let's go ahead and start with these. Hunter.Davenport.98. Thoughts on the accusations. And, of course, I'm glad you brought this up, honestly. Obviously, you guys heard it was not a lead topic. It was not even in my news and notes. The accusations with the players, the guy saying 13 football players jumped his son, whatever. I'll tell you guys this. I am waiting until all the facts come out to draw any sort of conclusion. It's a lot of he said, she said. I just think there's no rush in trying to, make some proclamation or give my opinion on something. It's like, let's let all the facts come out. Let's let the investigation happen. There's definitely some loose ends in this thing. There's some things that are very, very questionable, especially from the actions of the father of the player that supposedly was beaten up or whatever you want to call it. So as far as the accusations are concerned, man, I'm just letting the investigation play out. I really am not going to give any strong opinion or really any opinion at all until that happens. I want to see where things stand once we get all the facts. So that's really my only take on it, man. Maybe that's not the most popular take, or maybe that's a boring take, but that's the one I'm going with. I don't see the point in, dragging this thing out and bringing it to light when it's a bunch of he said, she said, man. That's really all it is at this point. We'll let the investigation play out, and then we'll go from there. So, Davis 576 Holt, over-under for made field goals this year. I think the over-under set at, 10 games. I'll say 15. I think over is the best play, honestly. I think we're going to be kicking some field goals. Scott W. Lawson, your thoughts on the holding call on Markway last year and the fake field goal versus Bama. Is it fair? Kind of random, but great question. Is it fair? I guess it's fair. Dude, here's the thing. There's holding on every play. It's like the ref did not have to throw that flag. Is that probably holding? Yes. Am I salty he threw the flag? Yes. If the roles are reversed and Bama ran that, would they throw the flag on them? Probably not. That's what irks me a little bit about it. So thank you, Scott, for getting me mad all over again. I'm just kidding. If you can only pick one, would you rather upset A&M, Auburn, or LSU? A&M 100 times out of 100. I'm so sick of losing to Texas A&M. That's a streak that needs to end badly. Give me the A&M upset. I will gladly take that. Jordan Portillo 93. Who is starting punt returner? What do you think of Doty on special teams? Starting punt returner, I'm thinking probably Xavier Legette. It seems like they really like him there. It's either going to be Legette or Jamie Robinson, I think. But I'm probably going to roll with Legette right now. And then Doty on special teams. I mean, listen, I don't want to see the guy get hurt, but he's a great athlete. And they want to get him on the field. And, I mean, hey, I tip my cap to Luke Doty for being such a team guy, for being a guy that wants to do everything he can for the team. The kid just wants to get on the field, and that's admirable. That's admirable for sure. I just don't want to see him get hurt, but, hey, the more athletes you can get on the field, I guess, the better. Trip_05. Who do you think is most likely to return a kickoff punt this season? Like I said, I think Xavier Legette's going to be your punt returner. I think kickoff returner, you're going to stick with Shi Smith most likely, and probably Xavier Legette there with him. I would say those are going to be the main guys for you on special teams as far as returning is concerned. Christian Bowman 1_03. What do you think about Israel moving to safety? I mean, I don't dislike the move. I mean, the safety position has been such an area of weakness for this team. It's been such an area of weakness. I think the more quality bodies you can get back there, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? I'm all for it because, like I said, this position has had so many problems. And the great thing is you got a lot of guys, I think, in the secondary that are really, really versatile, that can slide between corner and safety and nickel and all that. So, if they want to put Izzy back at safety, I am totally fine with it. I am totally fine with it. Just get the best guys on the field. Just get the best players on the field. That's all I ask. Capped_Way would have taken a noon kickoff on the Sun and nosebleeds to watch Carolina play Saturday. Yeah, I agree. Talking about this past Saturday, I guess, with South Carolina should have been playing Coastal Carolina. Nah, man, I agree 110%. I would have loved it. But, hey, at least we're getting football in 16 days, man. At least we're getting kickoff. We got another question. Adam Mikulski. I hope I'm saying that right. Adam Mikulski says, what do you think the DB situation will be like, more specifically the safeties, because Jamie and RJ are so similar and play like strong safeties? Do you think we should try to play with both of them at safety and possibly get beat over top a lot, or move Cam, Izzy, or a range guy like them to free safety and keep Jamie at nickel? Like I said, I just want the best guys on the field. I don't really care who they are. I love the attitude we have at the back end of the defense. Jamie, you talk about a guy like R.J. Roderick. You talk about a guy like Izzy. I love that we've got some nasty guys back there. I do like that, some hard-hitting safeties. Like I said, I don't really have a preference. I mean, I'd love to tell you I do, but just get the best players on the field. Just get the best players on the field. You have a fantastic secondary. Your secondary is loaded with NFL guys. It's loaded with NFL guys. There's no reason we cannot get the best players on the field. So get them on the field. I have no preference who plays. Just get the best possible options out there. I'm just checking here. Let's see. Okay, that's going to do it for all the listener questions, guys. Appreciate you all for being interactive. Appreciate you guys leaving the questions. Now, have a fantastic conversation. Again, somebody I'm very blessed to call a friend, somebody who does a fantastic job here in the local Columbia, South Carolina market. We had Mike Uva on a few weeks ago. Now we have Mike Gillespie of ABC Columbia. He is the sports director over at ABC Columbia. Again, he does a fantastic job. They do a great job at ABC Columbia. So sit back, relax, enjoy, guys. Enjoy the conversation. It's all brought to you by our friends, once again, at MyBookie, guys. Again, football season's quickly approaching. MyBookie, that can only mean one thing. It is winning season. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means free bets, super contests, Survivor, and more. At MyBookie, winning season is all about your chance to win big. Guys, bet anything. Bet NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball, UFC, college football, NFL. If you need a book, by the way, if you need a book to bet on, like if you're going into this weekend of games and you need a book to bet on, you'd be crazy for not opening a MyBookie account. You'd be crazy not to do it. There's a full slate this weekend. You want to get your bets in, this is going to be the place to do it. This is the craziest sports time of your life. It's simple. Make your picks, win big, collect your cash, invest in your intuition. Select from hundreds of future bets, or you can bet games in real time with MyBookie's live betting. Put that big brain of yours to good use. Like I said, guys, mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Gamecocks. That's mybookie.ag, promo code Gamecocks, and double your first deposit. Guys, new players get up to $1,000 in free play. So if you put in $1,000, they're going to give you $1,000 in free play. You can't lose here. It's free money to play with. It's designed to add more excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. Thousands of cross-sport wagers and parlays await. Sign up now to bet with the best and celebrate your victory. Again, guys, that's mybookie.ag, promo code Gamecocks. mybookie.ag, promo code Gamecocks. Your winning season begins today only at MyBookie. Enjoy this conversation with Mike Gillespie of ABC Columbia. All right, joining us today on the Spurs Up Show, he's with ABC Columbia, the sports director for ABC Columbia since 2016. He's a Gators alum. We won't hold it against him, but someone that I'm very blessed to call a friend, again, of ABC Columbia. Mike Gillespie does a phenomenal job in the local Columbia media market. Mike, appreciate the time, man. It's a pleasure to have you on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. It's funny. Like, you and I have been talking about doing this for the last couple years, and I'm pretty sure every year you'll send me a text message and be like, you should be on the show. And I'm like, absolutely. And then we just never do it. By the way, happy Easter. I just realized I'm drinking out of a mug.
Happy Easter indeed.
Enjoy that.
Hey, I feel like in 2020 you can just justify holidays or whenever. Like nothing makes sense this year anyway. So maybe Easter is in September. I mean, who knows?
People are just lucky that I put on pants every
day. Exactly. So, Mike, before we get into everything, obviously we got a lot to talk about Gamecocks, and I want to talk about your media career. But I want to go back because I was reading your bio, and it's very, very interesting. Again, you are a UF alum, but you grew up a Gators fan. You played basketball growing up. You wanted to play at Florida, play in the pros, stuff like that. Talk about your athletic career, because, again, I was reading up, and it's really interesting. You suffered from 4 lung collapses, which caused you to miss basketball, and that's kind of how you got into what you're doing now with ABC Columbia. Just kind of talk about, because, again, I really do believe everything happens for a reason, but just your athletic career, which feeds into this. Talk about just how that sort of all evolved and came together.
Yeah, so my sophomore year in high school, I was going to make the varsity basketball team because I was an amazing basketball player, and I did. I had a series of lung collapses in high school when I was about 15. That kept me in the hospital for a while, and I got out, and I wasn't the physical specimen that I was at one point. And I didn't know what to do. So my mom, actually, God bless her, she said, you know what, you love sports, and let me make a few phone calls and see what we can do. So she contacted the sports director at WCJB TV 20. His name is Joe Gervin, wonderful man. And asked if, a high school kid could help out around there. And he was like, absolutely, as long as we don't have to pay him. And they definitely didn't. And I put in the hours, and I kind of fell in love with it, man. It was just like, the grind was really cool to me. The Friday nights, under the lights, and the Saturdays, waking up super early for college football. It's definitely worn on me. I have gray hairs coming in the side of my head now at 31, but I'm really blessed, man. Like you, to be able to do what you want to do. I think everybody should have that opportunity in life, and that's what I wanted to do. That's what I love to do. I don't know what else I would do if I left this job. I really don't. Right. I have no clue what I would be good at. You're right. Everything does happen for a reason, and that's kind of how I got here.
Is it something that clicked, like you just immediately, you knew, you're like, I'm going to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. Like,
yes. When I saw my boss in high school drive a Porsche, I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. And then I got in the business and realized how in the hell can he afford those car payments? That makes no sense whatsoever. I'm pretty sure he had a side hustle somewhere, but I'm pretty sure he was actually like trafficking heroin on the side. But no, I'm kidding. That's happened. But yeah, I mean, I just realized, like, honestly, that it was really fun. I loved being around sports. I really loved the atmosphere. I loved the late nights and the early mornings, and just the hustle was really cool to me. So yeah, I mean, once I started doing it, I haven't really looked back.
Now, obviously, you grew up a Gators fan, correct? Okay, you grew up a Gators fan. So I think what's really interesting, and I want to talk about, again, your life or career or whatever at the University of Florida. But what's interesting, obviously, is South Carolina in late 2004, early 2005, hires Steve Spurrier to be their head coach.
Yes.
And then when you get to Columbia, he's still there, but just talk about because there's not really like this big rivalry. I know fans may argue, but realistically, South Carolina, Florida is not some huge rivalry. I mean, it's obviously been a very interesting matchup because of the coaching ties, but when you think of rivalries, we're not going to put South Carolina, Florida up there with like South Carolina, Clemson, or South Carolina, Georgia, or anything. But what was the take from a Gator diehard, a Gator fan? And then, like I said, when you're at UF and you're seeing Steve Spurrier's statue, and it's literally, Steve Spurrier Field. What was that feeling like? And then again, Spurrier beats Florida his first season at Florida. And then we obviously know, I mean, throughout his career, he was able to get the better of Florida. You beat Florida to win the SEC East in 2010. Like, I'm sure that had to be a very interesting dynamic for Gator fans. This man that had given you guys, I mean, everything, had given Florida, and I'm sure the hiring of Urban Meyer softened that blow a little bit. But just what was that dynamic like watching Steve Spurrier do what he did at South Carolina?
It was really cool. To be honest with you, I was really happy for him. I think you know, my great uncle Perry used to say, he was a big Kentucky fan, right? Mm-hmm. And he also went to Kentucky, went to Florida, and then got his PhD at Florida State. Now, where am I going with this? Well, he'd always say, you know, go Florida when they're not playing Florida State. Go Florida State when they're not playing Florida. Kentucky all the way. You know, and so it's one of those things for me. It was like, well, okay, I'm going to root for Spurrier at Carolina as long as they're not playing Florida. Right. You know, and so every year, that one game a year, you know, I'd root for Florida. So, you know, it's funny. I've been following South Carolina for actually a while because I really admired and loved Spurrier for what he did. I mean, you know, the guy can be a complete ass. You know, I mean, he really can. I mean, like what he said the other day, my buddy had him on down in Gainesville. No, he was talking about Vanderbilt and all of the issues that they've had. And Spurrier's like, yeah, well, you know, they're going to struggle. I don't know if they'll win one game this year. It's not like they have Arkansas on the schedule. I mean, dude, he's doing this in his 70s. Yeah. And he managed to piss off two giant fan bases within 10 seconents. That's him. That is him to a T. And you either love him or you hate him. Right. I grew up watching Spurrier with I went to Florida games with my dad, you know, since I was 7. And, you know, that's really where I started to love sports right there. I mean, that atmosphere was so cool to me. You know, and just watching everybody have such a great time, you know, and seeing that sports can really be the great equalizer, especially when you're winning. And so my memories of Spurrier were always very positive. And so that's why, it was very hard to root against him, you know. Right. But yeah, it was a strange dynamic. I mean, you know, especially now, you know, I get to Columbia and I see, you know, like the famous picture that's hanging in Williams-Brice. I think it's that first win over Florida in the swamp. And they, you know, like Spurrier's, you know, they're carrying Spurrier, you know, off the field. And, you know, it's that was really weird to me. But, you know, to be honest with you, sorry, I know No,
you're fine. You're fine.
My ass off. But I mean, to be honest with you, that the strangest part of all of this, I'll take you back to 2014. South Carolina beats Florida in overtime, right? And we all knew that was the end for Muschamp. You just all you had to do was take one look at Jeremy Foley's face, and Jeremy Foley's the old Florida athletics director. Yep. Foley looked like his soul just left his body. Like literally got up and just left the swamp. Like literally was walking down University Avenue somewhere. And you just knew that was the end. And the funny thing was, I'm sitting in that press conference afterwards, you know, listening to Spurrier talk. And, you know, Spurrier kept saying, you know, Muschamp's a really good coach. You know, he's a really good coach. And there was just something, I mean, obviously it makes sense now, but there was something about it then. I was like, man, he's really going to bat for Muschamp. He's really, really going to bat. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if Muschamp gets this job at South Carolina
without his blessing.
South Carolina didn't beat Florida in 2014.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think Spurrier had to go to bat for him a lot.
Yeah. It's the irony for sure that South Carolina was the team that ended his career in Gainesville and they ended up hiring him. So I want to go back. I want to stick with the Spurrier thing really quickly since we're on it. And again, you've been in Columbia since 2014. I know I said 16, but in 2014, you were the weekend sports anchor. And in 16, you took over, you promoted to the sports director. So you've been in Columbia since 2014, but I want to ask you on that same note with Steve Spurrier, because I have a little bit of an issue with it. And I get the side that argues the point I'm about to make, but I think there's a very, you know, and you see it on social media, Mike, you're very active on Twitter and stuff like that. But anytime Steve Spurrier is brought up in Gamecock circles, there's a very mixed reaction. I'm someone that I know it didn't end the way we wanted, but I'm extremely grateful. I mean, Steve Spurrier, the greatest years, like I'm 29, so we're about the same age. I was in college when Spurrier was the great run of 10 to 13. Like, that was the peak of Gamecock fandom ever. The greatest teams to ever take the field at the University of South Carolina. So when I think of Spurrier, that's what I think of. But it's crazy to me that there is a pretty large portion of the fan base that they despise him for the way that it ended. And I think I have to believe those same people just hated Spurrier before South Carolina hired him, and it's just this vendetta against him. But like, right. Has it been strange for you, I'll ask, to see like that mixed reaction? Because again, 2015 happened and he bailed like halfway through the year. We all know what happened, and it wasn't the most ideal situation. It wasn't the most ideal departure. And I'm sure if Steve Spurrier could go back, and he said before he kind of regrets it. He'd do things differently, but it was very, it's just Spurrier. He's like you said, he's a guy, he just fires off at the mouth. He's going to do what he wants. He doesn't follow anybody else's, way of doing things. I mean, but has it been interesting for you? Because I know it has been for me to see fans going into year 5 of Will Muschamp, and this is kind of getting off on a different subject, but going into year 5 of Will Muschamp, there are people that still want to blame Steve Spurrier for where the program is at. And I just think that's the complete wrong way to look at it.
I think that those two can mutually coexist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can have great admiration for Spurrier and love him for what he did. But I also think you can be very pissed off at Spurrier for where he did leave the program.
Mm.
I think that, and this is, this might be a hot take. I have no idea. But I do think Spurrier is largely responsible for Clemson's rise.
Right.
Because when you stop recruiting and showing up at high schools, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And when the college right up the road with an equally passionate fan base starts showing up, recruiting these, top guys, all of a sudden you see the pendulum swing, and that's exactly what happened. I think that it wasn't as strange for me, and here's why. Because I was a student when Urban Meyer was at Florida, and Urban did not leave in a great way either.
Right. Yeah. The health issues. Right. That was there was the health issues, and what's crazy, and this is just fans being fans. There are a lot of people who just said that Urban made it up, that he wanted to get out of Gainesville. He was tired of putting in 17-hour workdays. And that might be true. But I also do think that, look, you can listen to the 911 call from Shelly Meyer. Like, there were problems. He had health issues. Now, should he have left the year before? Probably. I always ask people, can you think of an ending to a college football dynasty that went well? Yeah.
Like,
it's always rough. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Southern Cal maybe, but even they were pissed off when Carroll left for the Seahawks, right? So I don't know. I don't think there's ever a good way to end it.
Yeah.
But again, to this day, Florida fans are pissed off at Urban, and I've got tons of friends obviously that are still big Florida fans, and I'm like, and they're pissed off, and I'm like, why? They call him Urban Liar, and it's like, why? I mean, you do realize that he was more successful than Steve Spurrier, right?
Yeah.
Like, in the small amount of time that he was at Florida, he won 2 goddamn national titles. I mean, that's impossible. Like, you talk about just, being in a place for a small amount of time and being able to do what he did. So to be honest with you, Chris, it didn't really surprise me too much when Spurrier left and people were upset. I just think that that's, it's fans being fans, and it's always going to be that way. But getting back to your original question, I do think that those two things can mutually coexist. I do think that you can love them and still be upset for how things ended. And to be quite honest with you, I think, Spurrier deserves to have his name on the field here. I really do. I think that should happen. And, I think Urban Meyer deserves to be in the Ring of Honor at Florida. I mean, I think over time, you got to let bygones be bygones. And,
yeah, no, I agree with you. Like I said, the best memories of Gamecock football for any fan come from the Steve Spurrier era. Like you said, you went to the University of Florida, obviously did a lot of different stuff for them. You were a play-by-play announcer for Florida Gators, IMG Sports Network. You were obviously majored in journalism, stuff like that. Come to Columbia in 2014. Like you said, you had been following South Carolina for so long, and Steve Spurrier was the head coach. I'm assuming it was, again, there's not really this huge rivalry, so I would assume there was like this perfect marriage when you got to Columbia. You're like, this is just, I feel like it had to be like a seamless transition for you coming to Columbia.
It was really nice. And I, to be honest with you, I think it was more of Tim Hill's doing than anything. Tim was my boss. He hired me here. I was in Davenport, Iowa, which nothing against Davenport, Iowa. Okay. But I literally lived next to the John Deere plant. Okay. So that's where I lived out of college. That was my first job. I was like, I need to be a little closer to home. I actually want to cover some different things. So I started applying for jobs, and Tim hired me, and Tim is the best. He wound up leaving in 2016 to do radio full time, but he was the one who brought me here, and he made my life so much easier. But I mean, in terms of just like coverage, it was kind of weird because a lot of the same guys who were at Florida were also here, like on the coaching staff, Spurrier Jr. obviously, and then they went out and got, oh my God, who's the old defensive coordinator? He came from Chicago.
Oh, Lorenzo Ward, you talking about?
No. No, he replaced Lorenzo Ward.
John Hoke?
John Hoke.
Yeah, Hoke, yeah.
John Hoke.
He came in to fix the defense, quote unquote.
Yes.
whatever that means. Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't go very well.
No.
So, I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, it was kind of cool. There were a lot of, there were a lot of ties there, which was interesting.
Yeah, and like you were saying, kind of off air, and I want to get into it. The ties between Florida and South Carolina are kind of eerie. Like my biggest thing. Listen, everybody knows my opinions on Will Muschamp. I hope South Carolina goes 10-0 this year. I hope he's here another 10 years. But the one thing I really hope, I don't want the next coach to come from Florida because I'm just sick of that connection. No offense to anybody, but I just, you know what I'm saying? It's been a while now. Like, can we think outside of the box when it comes to the next coach or whatever it may be? Like, we go hire Jim McElwain, I will lose my mind. But the ties continue, and the interesting connect that you're at UF and Will Muschamp is the head coach. You come to Columbia, Spurrier only lasts another year and a half. Yeah. Will Muschamp is hired by the University of South Carolina. I mean, you have to be going home just thinking to yourself, like, what did I do to have this? Like, not in a bad way, but it's like, I mean, it has to be just insane. Like you said, like the loss happens in 2014. And it's like just the sequence of events of Will Muschamp coming to Columbia. It's like the irony is insane.
I will tell you that it came to a head in 2017 when Florida and South Carolina played in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, Final Four. Yeah.
I was just like, all right, God damn it. This needs to stop now. Like, enough already. Like, I get it.
Just tearing your heart apart. You know what I mean? Like,
so it's a lot, man. Like, and we were joking off air that I'm going to wind up on blood pressure medication because of this job. And at times, like when these, are you a big Seinfeld fan? I don't know if you like Seinfeld.
I like it. I mean, I'm not a huge fan, but I like it. Yeah.
So George had this thing, worlds colliding. And that's exactly how I felt for a long time. It's, now I think there are so many people that, either hired me at Florida or, I worked with that aren't there anymore. And so, people asked me, back in 2017, that basketball game, actually, who are you going to root for? And to be honest with you, it was like, I don't really root, but I know these guys on Carolina's roster. Like, I know them personally. I want them to win because it's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Like Florida had been there, done that. Like that team didn't even deserve to beat Wisconsin let alone be in contention for the Final Four. So I mean, it is weird, and I really do hope that the connections stop at some point. Like you said, if they hire Jim McElwain, I might just leave. I might go up and just walk out and find somewhere else to live.
Yeah, it's the ties are just annoying to me, but for you, it's like literally ripping at the heartstrings. We have to make sure that Florida and South Carolina is like, all right, let's make a collective decision. We're going to kind of do our own things here now. We don't have to all do the same thing.
Here's the thing, though. I think McElwain would have a really hard time finding sharks here.
Have to go down to Hilton Head or Savannah or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Not too far. Not that far. Go down to Charleston. It's not that far.
Yeah.
I want to get into the nitty-gritty with you, Mike. Get on the football field. I'll stick with Muschamp because, listen, this year, and we can certainly talk about it, affected by the pandemic, stuff like that. The economic impact is felt across all industries, all people. It's hit everybody.
Sure.
So what happens as far as coaches who are on the hot seat, especially those with buyouts, the coach we're about to talk about, who knows what happens with that? But nobody can debate, in my opinion, this is a huge year for Will Muschamp, his staff, showing the trajectory of the program, the progress of the program. Again, my thoughts on Will Muschamp are very well documented. And I've also gone on record and saying, because of what has happened this year, the evolution of the pandemic and this COVID world we live in, I think most likely, no matter what happens, Will Muschamp's going to be back in 2021 because the school's not going to want to pay a $13 million buyout and pay the next guy to come in because of everything that's happened. And you just paid for renovations to Williams-Brice. So it seems like they might be strapped for cash. But with that being said, again, I think you'd agree this is a huge year. Yeah, they're strapped for cash. Yeah, I think you'd agree, though, this is a huge year just in the sense of, the national eye, the eye of the fan, like showing progress as a program. But I want to ask you, we talked about Will Muschamp was the hot name when he was hired by Florida. I mean, there's a reason Florida hired him.
Yep.
He was the hot name when he was at Texas. You've seen his career play out at Florida. You've seen it play out at South Carolina. Are you surprised in any way, or is it exactly what you expected, the way his career has gone at South Carolina after experiencing the Will Muschamp years at Florida?
That is a great question. I am surprised by how similar things have been. And when I say similar, I mean, all of the soft tissue injuries, right? The injuries to the quarterbacks. Like, I think Will has been snake bitten. He's always been snake bitten. And I don't think that it's anything that, his staff does differently. I mean, like, listen, you can put the blame on, the strength and conditioning coordinators all you want. But I think at the end of the day, sometimes it's just luck, right? And I am a little surprised by how unlucky Muschamp has been. And I like Will a lot. He's a good guy. He really is. I mean, he treats the media fairly well. I mean, I don't have any issues there. I mean, so I rooted for him when he got here. I have said this a couple times now. I do honestly think, Chris, that this year is very important because obviously last year was horrendous.
Right.
And, they're not going to be able to buy him out this year. So I don't think Muschamp is going anywhere unless they go over.
Yeah.
And in that case, I really
there will be a booster that steps up if something like that happens. Like,
I think that people will line up at his house with fiery pitchforks and escort him out if he goes over. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I don't think he lasts. That's not going to happen.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
In fact, I think they walk away with a win against Tennessee just because of all of their issues.
Right.
But I do think that this year is important because the more games he wins this year, right, the fewer games he has to win next year. And it's important for Muschamp because when you look at all of the talent, right, that they might potentially lose, I mean, that's going to be real. And I understand that there's a lot of talent coming in, especially on the defensive line. But, you look at, some of the greatest receivers that Carolina has had over the last couple of years, right? And, I mean, they've lost so much talent. So, I just think that if he isn't very successful this year, like say it's 4-6, that means that he probably has got to win 8 next year. With an offense that, I mean, I don't really know what that looks like, next year, because does Mike Bobo, just decide, he wants another head coaching job? I don't know. There are just so many things that are up in the air year to year in college football that, the more games you can win now, the better your future is going to be. And I know that's not breaking news or anything, but seriously, I do think, unlike a couple other coaches, like, let's just say Mullen or I don't know, Stoops, at Kentucky, like they have a couple years to play around with this thing, but Muschamp really doesn't. And I don't think he's going anywhere this year just simply because of the buyout. But next year, when that buyout drops, I think, if they don't at least make a bowl, I don't know. I mean, what do you?
I would honestly say if you see, listen, I picked 3-7, and I could very realistically see it happen for this season. Yeah, and I could, I picked it because I truly believe it could happen. I think 4-6 is probably. Yeah. I mean, listen, over under 3.5 in Vegas, and Vegas knows, correct? So I mean, most of the time they do. They don't build mansions off of winners' money. So,
but that was, again, Chris, remember, that was before Tennessee had like 40
players. For sure. I'll say, I've said all along, I see a path to 5 wins. I see a path to 6 wins. I really, really do. It's just making it happen. So, but I'll just say this either way, unless South Carolina wins 6 or more games, maybe if they win 5 or more games, but if they win less than 5, 2021 is going to be a year where you got to probably win 8 games. I mean, you're going to have to show real you know what I'm saying? It's going to have to be a big jump because you're saying year 6, the buyouts drop so much. I don't think a 6-6 record would bring you back. I really don't. Like, I don't think that'd be enough in year 6 to say, okay, this thing is headed where you want it to go. See, you're right. No, you're 110% right. The pressure will be on big time. It probably will be on either way because, I mean, listen, this is you're getting paid as much money as these college coaches are. The pressure's on there every year for these guys. But, if this year doesn't go how fans want it to go, 2021 will be massive. I don't think just getting to a bowl will be good enough. I think it's really interesting because Georgia, Florida is a lot like Clemson, South Carolina in the sense of the rival fans. They know everything about each other, their teams, everything. Yeah. So you're familiar with a guy like Mike Bobo. He was at the University of Georgia for a long time. Yeah. South Carolina obviously hires him in the offseason. And I think it is a massive upgrade from Brian McClendon. I mean, a guy that's proven, he's called plays for the University of Georgia. He's called big-time plays. Head coach at Colorado State didn't really go his way, but he's a proven play caller in the SEC. But your overall thoughts, again, somebody you're extremely familiar with. Florida's defense has had to go up against him every single year for a long time. Your overall thoughts on the Mike Bobo hire, and what do you expect from his offense this season?
Well, let me just say, in terms of Brian McClendon, okay, first of all, I think Brian McClendon is going to be a fantastic offensive coordinator.
I agree with you. I agree.
That guy really thought outside the box, and I had a really good conversation with him at the end of last year, last December. And, he flat out told me, he's like, look, what am I supposed to do when all of my quarterbacks are injured, my best wide receiver can't play? You're shuffling, rotating guys on the offensive line because they had so many injuries.
Yeah, I do want to make the point. I agree with you. I think fans are actually too harsh on Brian McClendon. I say he's a major upgrade. I think he's a major upgrade either way, just from the experience aspect. But I do agree with you. Yeah. And I'll say I'm probably in the minority here, and I don't think this is a very popular opinion. I know why they did it. I know it was to save face. Muschamp had to make the move. I, for one, wouldn't have been that upset if they brought McClendon back. I'm like you. I think he's a great young offensive mind. Yeah. And, I know Oregon, unfortunately, is not going to play this year, at least this fall. But I think he's going to have massive success. He's a great recruiter. I think he'll have massive success. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, honestly.
No, not at all. I mean, look, there were a lot of guys that, wanted him gone, and,
right.
and
yeah.
And rightfully so. Look,
Mm-hmm.
you make the kind of money that these guys make,
Mm-hmm.
and, you got to find a way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank, if you're making $1 million a year to coach the offense, which Mike Bobo is, you better find a way to go from 11th in the SEC in points per game last year to, let's call it, 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
I think that's fine if you're making $1 million a year to coach the offense. I thought the hiring of Mike Bobo was a slam dunk. I really do. I think, and for a lot of reasons. I mean, number one, Muschamp and Bobo go way back to their college days. They have a great mutual respect for one another. I think that Muschamp will let Mike Bobo do what he wants to do. I guess my concern, and I asked Mike Bobo this last year when he was hired, or earlier this year, when he was hired. I asked him the question: can a traditional offense still win in college football? That is my main concern.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the argument that, look at Alabama. But again, they've also made some major upgrades in their offense too. I mean, look at what Tua was able to do.
Well, you're also the key in that, what you just said, is you're not playing with Alabama's talent. That's the problem.
Right.
And I think that's the concern you heard from fans. And I think it's very justified when he was hired. It's like, you cannot run Georgia's offense with South Carolina's players. Todd Gurley's not in the backfield for South Carolina. All due respect to the guys on that team, but there's not a Todd Gurley. There's not a Nick Chubb. There's not a Sony Michel.
And that guy could have very well been Marshawn Lloyd.
No, trust me. Thanks for reminding me.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, it could have been, Marshawn Lloyd could have been a guy that, gets the ball, 20 to 25 times a game.
Yeah.
We don't know. But what I do know is that Fenwick is not Gurley, right? I don't think he is. I don't know. He's young, but I don't know. I don't think so. So, I think it's going to be a positive thing because, he was able to bring in his quarterback, Colin Hill. I think, to be honest with you, honestly, Chris, the only reason why I think we're having a conversation about a quarterback battle is because the season was delayed by 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's why. If the season hadn't been delayed, Colin Hill would have been the starter. But I do think that, because of the extra couple weeks, it's given Helinski a little bit more time.
Yeah, to learn the playbook.
Learn the system. But, so I think from that perspective, I think that the Mike Bobo hire was very, very good because, he was able to bring in some of his guys, Adam Prentice, guys that already know this offense. I'm really interested to see what they do in terms of using tight ends this year. That's something obviously that we saw a lot, when he was at Georgia. The run game was strong, thrown to the tight ends a lot. And I think that actually could be very positive given the fact that apparently the freshman quarterback on Carolina is the fastest person on the team, which, by the way, I take issue to. Because, what?
Yeah.
How the heck is that possible? I mean, listen, Doty.
He's a speedster, but it is definitely surprising.
But I mean, you're also talking about the same college that produced guys like, I don't know, Debo Samuel,
Ace Sanders.
Yeah, I mean,
Demir Bird, Bruce Ellington. Yeah, the list goes on and on.
So it's that was a little surprising to me. Now, his high school tape is really cool. I mean, you turn on, I think sophomore year he played receiver. And I mean, he's a stud, man. But again, you also have guys who have been, on this roster for a long time, like Shi Smith. When the news comes out about Luke Doty being the fastest guy on the team, and then Muschamp makes the joke, well, maybe some corners can play wide receiver.
Yeah.
I started to say to myself, like, okay, how much talent really is there on this offense? And I don't really know. So you can have the best offensive coordinator in the world, but if there's no one to throw to, like, that's a huge concern of mine. Right there.
No, the wide receiver position is definitely a question. I want to talk about that, but you mentioned the quarterback position, and again, it's polarizing right now because, like you said, it's funny. I've talked to different people about this, Mike. It's funny how much changes in college football so fast. I mean, you think back just a year ago, we're talking about, okay, Jake Bentley's senior year, Ryan Helinski's going to redshirt. We all have these plans, right? Boom, one game, Jake Bentley done for the year. He's transferring. Ryan Helinski's your quarterback. You go through the season. Okay, Ryan Helinski's our guy. He's highly touted coming in. And the backup quarterback's the most popular guy on campus. We all know that. It's the unknown guy. He gives you the hope, whatever.
Yeah.
You finally get Helinski. I'm thinking to myself, okay, we found the dude for the next 3 to 4 years. For better or for worse, Ryan Helinski's going to be the guy. Colin Hill decides to transfer to South Carolina. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm expecting Luke Doty to be QB2. I think Colin Hill's going to provide a nice veteran presence. He's going to be able to, mentor Ryan and coach up Ryan. And now we're sitting here talking about him taking his job because I agree with you. If I had to put money on it right now, just from everything, the way these guys talk about the quarterback situation and everything we know, I'm putting money on Colin Hill to be QB1 right now. And that's just like, it's crazy that I'm saying that. I feel crazy saying that, but it's a real thing. I mean, like you said, Mike Bobo handpicked him to come in. He knows the system. He knows the scheme. Nick Muse joked a few weeks ago that, hey, he knows the playbook better than Mike Bobo does. So I think all that factored in. I mean, listen, there's a legitimate QB battle going on right now. Fans, it's the reaction from fans is very interesting because I don't know. Listen, I truly believe the majority of the fan base just wants to win. I don't think any people really care who plays quarterback, but I think there's definitely some fans that are in a very interesting place right now because I think fan bases just so badly want to latch and attach to one guy and that be their guy. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that was Ryan. And I mean, I like Ryan a lot, but again, I just want to win games. I don't care who plays. But for a lot of fans, I see a lot of fans like talking crap on Colin Hill. I know he was a very average quarterback at Colorado State. He dealt with injuries, but I try to tell people, man, you better buckle up because there's a very real possibility, and I think it's going to happen, that he's going to be the starting quarterback against Tennessee.
Yeah, and I do too. But, I mean, let's be clear. Both guys are going to play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we're going to see Helinski out there. We're going to see Hill out there. Who takes the first snap? Probably Colin Hill. Mm-hmm. I think, too, I've been doing this for so long that, when you talk to guys – you can almost get obviously a sense of, the depth chart, but, you're also, at least for me, when I'm interviewing guys, I'm also talking to them as a person, not a player. Right. And to me, Colin Hill exhibits a lot of the leadership qualities that you want in a quarterback. He's a little older. He's wicked smart. He
has impeccable hair, by the way. Great beard.
Which, by the way, do you know the story about that?
I heard him talk about he had like a long beard. He was growing it out until he was cleared.
Yeah,
right?
and hair, and then he decided
to keep it.
Keep the hair, and so now
Steven Garcia 2.0. I mean,
yeah, right, exactly. But I mean, he's just not that Helinski does. I mean, look, Ryan is for his age. I mean, he is. Really, he's a mature guy, and a lot of people look up to him.
Well, but, it's like Ryan's a freshman all over again, is what I told people. When you have the coaching change, he's a freshman all over again. I mean, really.
And someone made this point to me. I won't say who it is, but it was a former offensive lineman who played for Carolina. He made this point to me. He was like, man, he goes, go back and watch the tape from last year. When Helinski was down on the ground. Mm-hmm. You didn't see a lot of guys go to pick him up.
Right.
And he was like, these are the things that I kind of look for when I'm evaluating quarterbacks, mm-hmm. right? It's like, do you have the trust and the admiration from your teammates? Mm-hmm. And not to say that he doesn't, because I don't know. Mm-hmm. certainly no current players are going to come out and be like, no, screw that guy.
Right.
But I think that point is really interesting that, maybe he just needs a few more years to earn that respect. Whereas I feel like Colin Hill might already have it based on what I've heard. And I think that's obviously really important, especially at that position. We make a lot about, the quarterback battle, obviously. I mean, dude, it's the sexiest thing to talk about.
Yeah, of course.
It is every year. And I honestly, I love it because it's free content, for me. I mean, I like, you can never go wrong talking about the quarterback battle. But I am, to be honest with you, I think the biggest concern for me is who's out wide.
Yeah.
And, that could be an issue. It could be a really big problem this year.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Shi Smith, and I mean, I've told people all offseason, I think one of the more underrated storylines is Shi Smith. Is he ready to be a number one? I mean, you talk about beyond him, but I mean, he's never caught for more than 500 yards in a season. I mean, is he ready to be, he's never had to be that guy, I'll say, because it felt the dynamic of the number one wide receiver position, like it felt different with Brian Edwards, because I felt like even when Debo was there, it was more of a 1A, 1B. Because their playing styles were different. I always looked at Brian Edwards and was like, that guy is a number one wide receiver. He might not be the most explosive playmaker on the offense. He's a number one wide out there. With Shi Smith, he's always just been a complimentary piece. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I think he has a skill set similar to Debo Samuel. He has that speed, that quickness. But, I mean, it's just a huge – is he ready to attract the attention that defenses are going to give him? You know what I mean? Is he ready to beat a double team? Like, that's a huge question mark for sure. I want to move – to a more positive when it comes to this team, and that is the defense. I will say, if this defense pans out, which it should, this should be probably one of the best defenses of the Will Muschamp era. I mean, I look back at that 2017 unit. I literally talked about on the show Monday. So good at getting the ball off people, the turnovers. That's the reason that team won 9 games, without a doubt.
For sure.
You have to replace Kinlaw. You have to replace Wanham. You have to replace Brunson. But you bring in a guy like Jordan Birch. Excuse me. You bring in a guy like Jordan Birch. I think Zach Pickens should make a huge jump from year 1 to year 2. And you look at that secondary, and I mean, you look at that defense, and it's just ridden with talent. You talked about all the talent Muschamp's recruited. They have recruited talent on the defensive side of the ball. Just talk about the defense as a whole, some things you like. I mean, listen, I think the big question is, can you replace the voids left by Kinlaw, Wanham, and Brunson? But all signs to me point that this should be a really, really good defense, and a defense that, listen, South Carolina, because of the struggles offensively, I think it's going to be a defense that this team's going to lean on to win some games this year.
Yeah, I do too. And listen, the good thing about this defense is, okay, so you have some pieces that you need to replace on the defensive line. Kinlaw, Wanham, obviously. So let's just say that USC's, pass rush isn't fantastic this year, okay, but it's marginal. The great part about this defense, though, is on the back end, you've got guys who are all going to play in the NFL within the next couple of years. I mean, Muschamp is a first-round talent. Horn, I really want J.C. Horn to break out this year. Yeah. Kind of like Muschamp did last year.
My bold prediction is J.C. gets his first career pick in the first game. I don't know if it's because I want it to happen.
Wait a second. Does he not? He doesn't have any
2 full seasons, 0 interceptions. That's That's the big knock on JC. And people ask me all the time, why is Izzy getting? Because there's a fun little head-to-head. I think it's like, who's the better player? Like, you love to compare and contrast, but they're both great players. But people ask me all the time, why is Izzy getting more love nationally than JC? I'm like, well, JC hasn't had that big game. He hasn't had that Georgia. That's what put Izzy on the map. So. Yeah, 2 careers, and he does not get the ball thrown his way a lot. That's a big thing too. But to be fair, JC's had some opportunities, and I mean, the UNC game, he had one go right through his hands, and unfortunately, it's Florida last year. You have one called back because of penalty, but yeah, zero picks through 2 seasons, which is crazy for a player that's good as he is. Crazy,
fascinating actually, and I probably should have known that, but that is a really crazy stat to me.
Yeah.
I probably did know that, but it's
yeah. So my bold take is he gets a pick in game 1, and even bolder take is, let's say he leads the SEC in picks this year. Now that would be something. So
there you go. Muschamp second.
Yeah, there you go. I'd be fine with that. But I agree with you. Those are both first-round talents for sure. I mean, no doubt.
And so, I mean, I think that's the positive, right? That's the positive spin. So you lose guys on the defensive line, but here's the thing. That secondary is probably the deepest it's been, under Will Muschamp, which is fantastic. And you've got, NFL talent back there. So I don't think it's going to be as noticeable maybe, as it was a couple years back. But, again, Jordan Birch is the real deal. Kind of interested to see, how many snaps he gets, and again, Zach Pickens, I've heard just wonderful things about that guy. I mean, he gets off blocks really, really well. He's fast. He can plug up the holes. I definitely think, he's going to live up to all of that hype. But again, there's some also holes, in the linebacking core. I mean, you lose a guy like TJ Brunson, who was a starter for all 4 years.
Underrated leader, I would say. I think that's a good way to classify him. Yeah.
Not a super vocal guy, but just, and just in terms of knowing what to do and where to be. Yeah. And they lost two linebackers over the last couple of years who I think were really fantastic players. Bryson Allen Williams, my former intern, love that guy to death, and TJ Brunson. And that's really, really hard to replace. It's funny, Chris, like when you think about it, I am really surprised that team went 4-8 last year, just given the amount of talent that Carolina had. I mean, I went out there to spring practice back in March when we could actually go and shoot things. And I'm looking around and I'm like, man, I don't really know what my story is tonight. Like, is it Helinski? Right. I don't know. Whereas like last year, I mean, think about it. It's like Kinlaw, first round talent. Brian Edwards, is he going to have the monster season that, some people say he's going to, Wanham, can he elevate his game and, go in the first couple rounds of the NFL draft next year? But this year was just very different. There are a lot of guys that I don't want to say are under the radar, but are just a little unknown right now. I think the talent is there, but there are a lot of guys, especially on that defensive line, that just are a little unknown.
Well, and that's what scares me about it. When people ask me, Chris, why are you not, we bring all this back. What scares me is that to the point you made, number one, I agree. There was way too much talent on that roster to go 4-8. I don't care who the quarterback is. Way too much talent. But what scares me is that when I look at this team, I feel like you basically, and there's definitely unknowns. We have these young freshmen that who knows how they're going to pan out. But really, when you look at it, it's just kind of like the point you made. When you look at this team and you look around, it's like this is the same exact team as last year, just without your best players. Like that's how it feels. You know what I mean? Like, and again, there's definitely unknowns like at the wide receiver. Who knows? Maybe Mike Wyman, Rico Powers, maybe Jalen Brooks. These dudes we've never seen play. Maybe they turn out and they're the real deal. But people ask me how do you not expect the defense to be like top 3 of the SEC? And I'm like, listen, I think they're going to be good, but it's the same exact defense minus Kinlaw and minus Wanham. Listen, I think Jordan Burt's going to be a nice player, but he's probably not going to play a ton as a freshman. But, it's basically the same team. And that's what scares me a little bit. I know you expect guys to get better as they go through their career, but everybody else is getting better too. It's not like we're the only team that's getting better. So, kind of a side note, but that's you made the point. That's definitely the one thing that worries me a little bit is, like you said, there's a lot of unknowns. And this team is one big question mark in my mind.
Yeah. And, listen, the secondary is going to be the strongest part of this team.
Yeah, for sure.
Offense, defense, special teams. It is going to be the strongest part of this team. And I do think that Carolina can win and lose games based off of how that secondary performs. There are some interesting matchups this year, though. We know that Florida loves to pass the ball. Second game of the season, I think that could actually go in Carolina's favor because, look, if they're willing to test Carolina's secondary, that's a pretty hard feat. I really do think that teams that decide to pass the ball on USC, they're gonna have a hard time. I do wonder, to your point, Chris, I wonder how that defensive line will step up, and especially stopping the run. I don't know. I really don't. And I wish there were more answers right now. Yeah. But until they line up, these are just guys that we don't know a whole lot about yet. Unlike last year where, we knew Kinlaw was going to be a first-round talent.
Yeah, you knew Edwards, you kind of – we had a lot more answers for sure.
No, exactly, man. And, I don't want to be cliche and be like, well, we got to, wait to see what happens. But I think with this team, it really is just, okay, how do we put some of these misfit toys all together, and make them gel and work? Because it's like – especially on offense, because you've got guys who have been in McClendon's system for a couple of years, and all of a sudden we're going to go to kind of like an archaic style lineup, and it's almost like, are they going to run the wishbone? Like what are they going to
Lou Holtz days?
What are they going to run? I don't know. But they really, exactly. They really want to have the double tight end set. They want to be, I think, run first. But God, seriously, there are so many questions on this roster. Not a lot of continuity, I feel like, from last year at all.
Yeah, I want to get your take overall on the season, Mike. Again, I've made my prediction. I picked 3-7, but I've also stated that I think 5-5 should be the minimum expectation. I do believe, even with the questions offensively, like you said, Mike Bobo's getting paid a lot of money to figure it out. Hey, I don't care about the question marks. Get it figured out. It's the reason you make the big bucks. So I think 5-5 should be the minimum expectation to really show progress and show, hey, we've got, we bounced back from that 4-8. That's not the norm, right? That's a one-off. That's not the norm. We got this thing back on track. But I've picked 3-7. I've said many times again, I got burned last year picking 7-5. I'm going a little conservative on my picks, but I think 3-7 is fair, given the question marks around this team. But I will say I'm going a little conservative on the picks. But I just want to ask you, is 5-5, do you think that's fair to set that as the minimum expectation? And I don't know if I'm necessarily going to ask you to put you on the spot and ask you to make a record projection, if you will, but just when you look at this 2020 season as a whole, and again, who knows if we even get through the whole season? We're playing the hypothetical game and just assuming, but just your overall take on this season, what you're expecting from this team.
I think that what you just said is the most important part of this year. We don't even know what the season is going to look like in a month. Yeah.
It's like we were talking about off air, 3 Big 12 games this weekend already postponed. So who knows? Really, right. Who knows?
These things right now, we were also talking about this, how news, things change so quickly now. You talk about, Tennessee 2 weeks ago, everything seemed to be fine. And then,
44 guys.
They start having some cases, right? They do contact tracing, and all of a sudden you got how many? 44?
44 guys in that. They had to basically cancel the scrimmage Saturday because they didn't have enough bodies.
Right. So, to me, it is a war of attrition this year. And I don't think for that reason it is extremely hard to put any sort of specific number on this, because I don't even know if they even get to 10 games, played this year. It could very well be a thing where, 3 games into the season, there are way too many cases on college campuses and they have to shut it down. But I do think, let's just hypothetically say that they do play 10 games. I think, given the news out of Georgia, with Newman, sitting out, waiting for the draft, I think Carolina has, to be honest with you, I think Carolina has more talent than Kentucky does. So that's, 2. I think you get a win over Vanderbilt. I think, given the struggles that, Tennessee has had this offseason, I think Carolina's lucky that they get them week 1. And under the lights too. And so that's 4. And then maybe just 1 that goes USC's way. And I don't know if that's Florida, a noon kick, where the students don't show up until 12:40, and there are only going to be 18,000 fans in the swamp. And believe me, man, I grew up there like that. those players feed off of the energy so much down there. And that is one of the loudest venues I've ever been in. And I think that's another storyline this year. You're not going to have that energy.
Yeah, home field advantage isn't a. And I was talking to my buddy about that because the Tennessee game, I think it's a coin flip game, but I picked Tennessee to win 23-17. But I think it's going to be like a 23-20, 24-21. And I told my buddy, I was like, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because in a normal year, I probably would pick South Carolina just because the home field advantage edge at night. But it's like you don't get that. You really just don't. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah, no, it's not. And, remember what happened at Georgia, right? Carolina at Georgia last year, if that had been a 7:30 kick, I think it
right.
goes the complete opposite direction. Right. I really do. But because USC got Georgia at noon.
Looked like they were sleepwalking a little bit.
They did. And the same thing, I think, could happen at Florida week 2. Especially against a team like, if you want to talk some X's and O's, especially against a team that likes to throw the ball. And we know that Mullen likes to throw the ball. And, if he's willing to go at the secondary, I think UF could pay the price. So I don't know. It's interesting. I would say 5-5 is not a crazy expectation at all. But I think, more so the biggest storyline this year is, can they just get through 10 games, and I think that's going to be the number one storyline this year, man.
And I definitely don't want to bring you on without talking about that. I know I've waited till the end of the show, but I think we've had some very interesting developments in the last couple of days for sure. Again, like I said, Big 12 postponing a couple of games. And I think one of the most interesting pieces of news I saw, and I'm sure you saw this, I think it was Lincoln Riley saying they're not going to release COVID testing numbers because of basically gamesmanship, like a competitive advantage, similar to an injury report. And I have to imagine because, I mean, we all know you deal with it directly. I mean, you sit in these pressers and stuff. These coaches are very anal. They're very private. They don't want to share any. They wouldn't even do press conferences if they didn't have to. They don't want to tell anybody anything. They're in their own little football bubble.
Yes.
I feel like this is going to be a thing that you're going to see across the country that, like, these teams we're not going to know probably till game day or maybe the day before if so-and-so's out with COVID or the starting quarterback or, like, 7 members of the team. Like, it's just going to make this season so wacky from, I'd say, a gambling perspective for sure. I mean, I know I got buddies that gamble on college, sports, and man, it's going to make just wild from a gambling perspective, but on the field perspective, results. I will say this because I talked last week to the Saturday Down South guys. They cover SEC football, and I think everybody can agree the SEC's done a pretty good job as far as handling this. I mean, when you compare to, I think the Big Ten and Pac-12, I think they're a bit silly. They're going to look terrible if we get through this season. Let me just put it that way. It's not going to be perfect. Guys are going to get it, but if we get through this season, they're going to have egg on their face. But with that being said, I mean, like you said, I think this is going to be one of the wackiest, probably the wackiest season we've ever seen and especially, like I said, that Lincoln Riley news coming out, just keep it a secret, keeping it in-house that is wild to me.
Treating it like an injury is absurd because number one, it's not an injury.
Yeah.
Number two, it's a goddamn pandemic. Like, I mean, when you have doctors that come out and say, no, releasing this data is actually good because then we can figure out more about this virus, how it's, transmissible, who has it, who doesn't have it. When you have professionals, doctors coming out and saying, this is what you should do, that's what they should do. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, my best friend's a doctor and, sometimes he thinks he's God because, he's got that complex and it's tough to listen to medical advice, no matter who it's from, because we all feel like, we went to medical school for 10 years, especially now, Chris, like everyone thinks that they're a doctor now.
WebMD, man.
Yeah, exactly.
WebMD.
But I think it's absurd. I think that universities should be required to release this data. And, They claim that it's a HIPAA violation. It's not a HIPAA violation at all. They're not specifically saying who and who does not have a virus. That would be a HIPAA violation. So, I think it's absurd. And, for that reason, I hope that, Oklahoma loses 3 or 4 games this year. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah. I guess I got a very interesting question for you because I'm just going to go ahead and say this, and this is not a political statement. I'm not a political guy at all, but I think everyone, when it comes to this conversation,
yes.
I'm at least willing to admit I think everybody somewhat has an agenda in this. Like, I want to see football played. It's not a secret. Especially for people like us in this, we want to see football played. I want it to be as safe as possible, but if it's possible, I want to see it played. Like, you see a good friend of ours, I'm sure, Eric Kimry on social media.
Yeah.
Eric's a great dude. He cares about the safety and health of people, but he's a football coach. He wants to see football played. So, everybody's on one side or the other, but I'm just curious to what you think, because I was having this conversation the other day. I just wonder what will it take, because I think the SEC, man, is dead set on playing. I think it would take something outrageous.
They're going to pull this through.
Yeah. I just wonder what it would take for the SEC to be like, you know what? We thought we could do it. We can't. And like I said, I'm praying and hoping that doesn't happen. But it's just an interesting conversation to have. That I just wonder what it would take for that to happen. Because like I said, man, I think at this point, I think it's full steam ahead for the SEC there. And which is what I thought would happen the entire offseason. I did not think at least the SEC would throw in the towel. They are going to go down with a fight. They're going to go down with a fight. If it crashes and burns 4 weeks into the season, so be it. But they are not going to lay down and do what the Big Ten did. There's no chance.
No. And the funny thing about the Big Ten and the Pac-12, they all thought that the other 3 Power 5 conferences would follow, and then they didn't, so they look ridiculous. And the greatest part about that is just coming from an SEC guy, there is now a pecking order established, right? And the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are not at the top. And we all knew that, but now it's established because the other 3 conferences said, no, we're not following your lead. I do think that what it might come down to is individual schools making these decisions, right? And when you have presidents who, most of them, let's be real, they're academics, right? They have spent their entire careers in academia. A lot of them didn't play sports. I think when you have those people making the decisions, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this season they called it off if things got really bad. I do think that they're going to try to bulldoze through as much as they can. But, the bigger question I think for me is, what happens when, let's just say USC, for instance, USC goes online only, right?
I think that's definitely coming. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if the cases continue to go up, right? Okay, they go online only. So are they willing to admit that sports is more important and they can keep playing football, they can keep playing, soccer, whatever it is on campus, and, it's not safe to have students on campus, but it's okay to play a football game. And that, I'm serious, Chris, that is really where the conversation is going to get really heated. Because if it's not safe to be on campus, you can't really tell me that it's safe to play games on campus, right?
I think it's going to get heated because people want to pretend like these guys are normal students, and it's like they're not. And that's the conversation I had with the guys last week. It's, the NCAA, we have to stop, however you feel about players should be paid, whatever, but you have to stop pretending like they're normal students. They're not. They're not. They're not.
No, and they're not. They're athlete students, right?
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yes.
But I could definitely see a scenario where, you have outbreaks on campuses, and all of a sudden the presidents, the chancellors, what have you, they say it's not safe to play. It's not safe to have students on campus. It's not safe to play. And then I think once you have a couple of schools pull out, then it becomes a really big problem. logistically, obviously for the SEC to figure out. And I think that's probably where they pull the plug. But, I think you're right, Chris. The SEC's done a really good job, I think, of, setting this up. They were really smart to delay the season by 3 weeks. And they look really smart now. I mean, look at what the Big 12 is doing. So I think they had a good plan in place. But now I do think that it's going to come down to just the individual universities and how that goes, how if they can manage an outbreak or not. And that will be the number one factor, I think, in whether we have a full football season or not.
Well, and I will say, too, that I do still believe that, even what we saw at Tennessee and whatever, I do still believe these players are in the best possible position to remain healthy, being with their teams and in their facilities. I thought Scott Frost of Nebraska and the Big Ten said it best a few weeks ago, or really when the Big Ten decided to shut everything down. I mean, he said, if our goal is for no student athletes, for 0 student athletes to get coronavirus, we're going to fail either way, whether we have football or we don't. So let's have them in the facility. They're getting the people, I know people love to play the victim card with these players, like, oh my gosh, they're getting exploited for their likeness and they don't get this and they don't get that. And I hear you, but you've been in the ops building, man, and like all the resources they have, and they're getting tested all the time. Like, there's nobody, they have the best chance not to get it of any normal human being. So, I definitely do believe that, I don't think we're going to get through a season where 0 people are, Muschamp's updated. I mean, people are, South Carolina's got a few cases. I mean, it's not a ton. It's very manageable, but it's just not realistic to think that, you're going to have 0 throughout the entire year, because you can't realistically put these guys in a true bubble. They're college students. They go to the dorm. I mean, they're at the facility a lot, but they're around Columbia. But I do believe they're in the best possible position to remain healthy and be healthy, and they have everything they need at that facility. I think they're in a good spot, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that they have, the means to test, and I think that's very important. The problem is that, college campuses are petri dishes, right?
Yeah.
And it's, and that's the thing that's very scary for me. And that's what makes college football and college athletics different than everything else. Because you can't put them in a bubble. Certainly you can test and you can do contact tracing, but that doesn't mean that they can't get the virus. Right. You know what I mean? And so that is, I think, going to be the number one factor in whether we have a football season or not, whether these universities can contain outbreaks. And, again, it's unreasonable to think that we're going to get through a season with just, 5 cases, for instance. Right. That's not going to happen. But I also don't think it's unreasonable to expect an outbreak. We see how quickly these things, this virus moves and is spread. And, it wouldn't shock me if 1 or 2 teams in the SEC, had to shut things down because either they just don't have enough players or they don't feel like it's safe to play. That's why I would not want to be in sports gambling right now.
No, seriously. I mean,
there's just no way to predict this at all.
Yeah, you place a wager, and like I said, 2 days for the game, starting quarterback, starting receiver, third of the offense is out. It's like, well, that doesn't look very good anymore.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and I've said this for months now. The teams with the best leadership, I think, will win games this year. More so than any other year. Obviously, that is incredibly important, especially in the game of football. But now, when you're talking about just this year being a war of attrition, it really is going to come down to the leadership and the older guys just making sure that these young dudes don't go out all the time, that they're being smart. And that's a constant battle too, man. Like I asked Mark Kingston this the other day, like, how do you balance it? How do you balance, being a coach of 19-year-old kids, and making sure that they are also really smart. And, he said, all you can do is just make sure that you overemphasize the fact that there is a pandemic out there, and, this virus is serious, and that's all you can do. It's out of your hands. And so I'm hoping that the leadership really does step up this year because, if not, then I could definitely see an outbreak. We've already seen it on campus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's there. It's going around. And I think these players have to make sure that they steer clear of shit like we saw the other day, where you had what at that bar, I can't remember that, what was it called? The Cockaboos? Oh,
TLC. Yeah, the loose Cockaboos. Yeah,
the loose Cockaboos.
Insane. It was insane.
I mean, you can't do it. You just
can't. You know what? Kind of a side note, and I don't know if anybody knows. You know what's funny? I've been invited to go there before that video dropped, and now I saw that, and I'm like, man, I'm really glad I didn't go. Because even how, no matter how you feel, I was like, you know what? This would not be a good look if you're like, oh my God, look at this video. Oh, there's the Spurs Up show in the middle of the crowd.
Not good.
What a responsible guy.
Not good.
I was like, yeah, let me not do that.
Spurs Up. Sponsored by Corona.
Yeah, seriously. No, for sure. I will say, though, I do agree with you because a lot of fans ask me, like, the Tennessee game, hey, is this going to help South Carolina win the game? And it's like a weird question because I'm like, well, I'm not pulling for Tennessee to have guys out with a sickness. Like, I'm not. Right. But you are right. That's going to be a factor in week to week. Do you have the right guys in place, the leadership?
Yes.
It's going to be a factor. It is. Whether you like it or not, it is going to be a factor. Mike Gillespie, ABC Columbia. Mike, appreciate you taking the time, man. Before I let you go, it's been a phenomenal conversation, obviously. I'm glad we're able to do this. Again, you are the sports director at ABC Columbia. Just let everybody know where they can consume your content via social media, where they can watch you, what times, like everything you guys do with ABC Columbia that maybe people aren't familiar. Just kind of give them the rundown of where they can consume your stuff.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Mike ABC Columbia. Super simple. And Cam Gaskins is our weekend guy. He is wonderful. He is I call him the better half of the sports department. He is great. I'm on Facebook, Instagram too. You just look up Mike Gillespie, I'm sure. I'm verified on Instagram and I have 750 followers. And people ask me, how did that happen? And I say, I have a good agent.
I know because I asked you.
Yes.
Yes, I asked you. Like, what do I have to do?
Which I'm surprised. You're not verified yet, are you?
Mm-mm. No, not on anything. No. And I have parody accounts, and I'm still not verified.
Oh, that's yeah. Are you still blocked by Gamecock football?
I am. Yeah. There's a story behind it. It's not for the reason people think. Happened last. I guess we can talk about it now. I mean, I haven't talked about it on the show before, but basically, long story short, people don't like to acknowledge this, but from doing what I do, I know people. I've gotten to know people, and if you want to call them sources, you want to call them whatever, but this was last summer, last June, around the time that Jordan Birch was being heavily recruited, obviously. And, his recruitment was like the biggest secret in all of college football. We heard nothing. Nobody knew anything. And this is kind of funny how this played out because it was on his Snapchat, but I was told, hey, Jordan Birch is on campus today. He is in the ops building, just to let you know. And I was actually, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I don't know if this guy is still with USC football or whatever, but he sent me a picture of Jordan Birch on the training table in the ops building. So and obviously I did not post the picture. I was like, I would never do that.
Sure.
But I basically put out a tweet saying, hey, the number one prospect in the country is on campus with like the eye emoji. Everybody loves to tease it and everything. But I talked to some, and I toured the ops building. And when I toured it, and I won't say who toured me, but it was a guy that I still know to this day. And he asked me, am I touring you as media or am I touring you as a fan? And I was thinking to myself, well, I mean, I'm not credentialed by USC. I just want to see it. I'm a fan. Like, let me just see it. So, of course, I'm an idiot, and I make the mistake before I go in of taking a picture of the stadium, being like, oh, look where I'm at type thing. We get about 90% of the way through the tour, and George Wynn calls my guy that toured me, and basically he's like, hey, that guy's media. He has a website. And that's kind of the funny thing and the ironic thing is people love to shit on me that I'm not media. It's like, well, George Wynn apparently thinks so. Anyways, that's another conversation. So he's like, okay. He's like, apparently you're media. We have some recruits on campus today. Got to get you out of here, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's about 3-4 days later, and that's when I get blocked by Gamecock football. And I had a buddy of mine at the time that was on the creative media team. He basically told me, he's like, yeah, dude, like they did it because they felt like you were getting so much information. They wanted to stop that from happening. And they just felt like, I don't know what they felt like. I don't know why they thought that would make any difference, but they did. So that's kind of the story behind it, man. That's really how it happened. This was before the whole Muschamp thing. This was months before I said anything about Will Muschamp. So yeah, that's honestly the first time I've actually told that story on air or just in general. So it's just another interesting tidbit in the saga that is the Spurs Up Show.
I have one for you. Last year, was it last year? It was December. Do you remember the whole Ryan Helinski fiasco?
With what part? His injuries or
injury?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
yeah.
I reported that he had a torn ACL.
Right.
Remember this?
Yeah, I think I do actually. Yeah.
Okay, so I took heat from.
I do. You know what? I do vividly remember this now. Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Like even in the media. Well, I mean, people in the media were pissed that I had the information. Like,
right.
Like they, we're all going up against each other for info. Well, I got that news because someone had told me that he was going to have surgery on his elbow. And so I texted Helinski and I said, hey, man, which, by the way, Ryan Helinski and I knew each other a little bit before he came to USC. So,
right.
I considered it okay. And he was like, yeah, man, I just got a scope on my knee. And the doctor said I've got a torn meniscus and torn ACL.
Yes.
So,
straight from the horse's mouth.
It seems, yeah, exactly. And I joke with people to this day, and I've never said this publicly. That's how I got the information. So if anyone still thinks that I'm a terrible journalist, that's how I got the info. And I joke to this day, literally, like it couldn't have been like a better source. Like there was no source that was better, other than maybe Ryan Helinski's knee developing a mouth and telling me how it was feeling,
right.
And so I say that because it is very, very easy, especially, in the media to ruffle feathers, and you just gotta bulldoze through, man, and
I mean, I see it all. I'm sure everybody else sees it too, but I mean, I see it all. A lot of times it's not what is being said, but it's the fact people don't like who is saying it.
Yeah.
Like you said, that person has that info and they don't. I mean, why? Because again, we're getting off track, but I just say, I think back to before I was doing what I'm doing and I was just a fan on Twitter because I've always been very active on social media. Like I like it. I like social media. But I don't know, man. I think back to when I was a fan. I just think back, like, there was nobody I didn't like. I didn't care where the info came from as long as it was right. Like, I really didn't. And, like, it's been wild to me to see the evolution of – I mean, there are people on social media that really don't like people in the media or whatever you want to call them, in content, whatever. Because, I mean, it's so funny. I tell people, I'm like, dude, I have a T-shirt that has media in quotation marks and insider in quote. Like I make light of it. I don't think of myself as I think of myself as a South Carolina content creator, honestly. But either way, it's just wild to me to see like that there are people that really don't like other media. It's just wild. Like, who cares if the info's correct? Who gives a damn? Like, really, at the end of the day, I mean, why does it matter? I don't know. It's just the interesting world that is Twitter, because you don't get that on any other app. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I just got a nice letter from a fan. Let's put fan in quotation marks. Yesterday, I got an email, and I call it a letter because it was like 13 paragraphs long, telling me how much I suck at my job and I'm the worst sports director in the history of Columbia, or hopefully the history of television. I didn't know whether or not to cry or frame this thing because
I'd probably frame it, to be honest.
It was so eloquent that I really did, for a split second, feel like the worst human being ever. But just that's being in the media, that's what we take.
Yeah, when you're in the public eye, it's just what you deal with. And I say, man, if people aren't talking shit, you're not doing anything worth.
That's true. That's true.
Anything worth anything. So
right.
Yeah, whatever. Mike Gillespie, ABC Columbia. It's been a pleasure, man. Let's definitely do it again soon, man. Obviously, it's going to be a very interesting season. I know we all have our fingers crossed, but This was fun, man. Would love to have you back on sometime.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me. And I do want to say one more thing. I think you do a great job. You were kind of the trailblazer, I think, in sort of using all types of media, and you were before its time. So nice work.
I appreciate that, Mike. No, that means a lot coming from somebody, local influential media guy like yourself. So I appreciate that. But he's Mike Gillespie, ABC Columbia. Go check it out. I'm Chris Phillips. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on an episode of the Spurs Up.